exactly the kind of scrutiny that any future Prime Minister should subject themselves to. I am concerned about Liz's economic approach to this, though, particularly around energy prices, because principally, as you know, Tom, she's looking at tax cuts. But that will not really help people on low incomes, and it won't help millions of pensioners who will get absolutely zero benefit for the national insurance, cutting national insurance. Where Rishi's approach, as he's done in the past, has been to target his support. He offers broad-based support right across the piece, but also to those low-income households have had already up to £1,200 a year, which is far better targeted than tax cuts. And he's said he'll do it again. So he's looked after us in the past, particularly those low-income households, and he says he'll do that again, which I think people can take comfort from that. Whereas for the low-income household, somebody on national minimum wage, in terms of the national insurance cut, would get about £60 a year. It just doesn't go anywhere near to fill that gap that people are going to see in their household finances.
I wonder to what extent this is consistent with what Rishi Sunak said at the start of this campaign, that he didn't want any fiscal loosening, that might worsen the effects of inflation. Now, fiscal loosening can come, of course, in the form of tax cuts, but it can also come in the form of greater spending. Why would Rishi Sunak spending more, giving people money to get through this cost of living crisis that is undoubtedly weighing on people's minds right now, why would that not be inflationary, but Liz Truss cutting taxes would be inflationary in your view?
Well, you're absolutely right to point to consistency. It's hugely important. In the past, we've had too much chaos, really, to these crises. We need somebody who's going to take a consistent approach. Rishi's done that right at the start. When he announced his support earlier in the year, he said he would keep the matter under review and there would be more support if the situation got worse. The situation has got worse, and he's going to provide more support, and it's going to be targeted at the people who need it most. That's absolutely the right way. I've got to say, Liz's position, I don't think is consistent. She's said it's going to be tax cuts, not handouts. Yet now she's talking about handouts. You know, we don't want these U-turns. It's very difficult for backbenchers like me to go and defend a policy and then have to defend a reversal of that policy. We don't want to see that, and that's what we're seeing through the handouts line. And we also saw through the regional pay bodies. He said you're going to do regional pay bodies, which would have cost nurses in my area about £2,500 a year on their salaries, and that position was quickly reversed. We don't want that. We want is consistency, a calm, consistent approach, a competent approach, and I think that's what we'll get from Rishi Sunak.
What the Liz Truss camp would say to that question of the tax cuts versus handouts is that she's had this itinerary of she'd prefer tax cuts, but of course handouts to some extent may be necessary. I wonder if Rishi's playing his strongest hand here, talking about U-turns, of course, because first he said he wouldn't cut taxes, then he proposed this VAT cut. First he said he didn't want any fiscal loosening, now he's saying that he will spend more, perhaps in handouts to help people through the cost of living crisis. He's been accused of U-turning over Rwanda, over the Brexit protocol bill, over about 19 issues that the Liz Truss camp has put out in terms of accusing Rishi Sunak of changing position. Is this all getting a bit messy?
I don't agree with any of those points at all, actually. I think Rishi's been very clear right from the start. He had headroom in his budget, as you know, to make sure we can provide further support if needed. He said that right from the start, and that's what he's done. What Liz hasn't got is any of that headroom, any of that firepower in the cabinet, you know, in terms of making sure we've got more money. Liz has already committed to spend about £40 billion a year, cutting taxes on many people who are fairly high earners, so that cuts of national insurance would save somebody on £150,000 about £1,800 a year, and it saves somebody on low income £60 a year. The corporation tax cut saves big corporations, people like BP and Shell and people like that. It saves them about £19 billion a year, which, as you know and I know, Tom, lots of which will just go back in bonuses and to shareholders. I think Rishi hasn't committed to that kind of spending, unfunded spending, so he has the ability to step in and provide more support in a strategic way. He's always said he will do that, and that's exactly what he's doing. He did it in the past, he's doing it in the future. So he's committed that everybody will get something. pensioners will get more money in terms of winter fuel allowance, and those low-income households will get probably hundreds of pounds of extra support to meet that extra cost of energy. I think it's a perfectly consistent approach. We won't see U-turn after U-turn with Rishi because he thinks things through, he understands the detail behind the policy, he delivers good solutions, and he implements them well.